In the vast expanse of the Orion Arm, humanity had always imagined their first contact would be with a technologically superior civilization. Instead, we found the Lumini, a species of bioluminescent beings whose peaceful nature had left them defenseless against the harsh realities of interstellar politics. Their planet, a jewel of crystalline formations and perpetual auroras, had become nothing more than a footnote in the galaxy's endless territorial disputes. The year was 2157 when our deep space sensors detected their distress signal. The message was simple yet haunting. Please help. They're taking everything. By the time our first response vessels arrived, 3 other advanced civilizations had already stripped the Lumini's homeworld of its valuable resources and abandoned them to their fate. The sight that greeted our crews was heartbreaking. Millions of Lumini huddled in underground caverns, their once brilliant glow dimmed to barely a flicker. Most spacefaring races had written them off as a lost cause. After all, what could these gentle creatures offer in return for aid? They couldn't fight, had no rare technologies to trade, and their artistic achievements, while beautiful, held little value in the cutthroat galactic economy. The prevailing wisdom was clear. Helping the Lumini was a waste of resources. But humanity saw something different. Perhaps it was because we remembered our own history of colonization and exploitation. Or maybe it was because we understood what it meant to be underestimated. You see, while other species saw humans as primitive due to our evolutionary background as persistence hunters and omnivores, they failed to grasp how these traits had shaped us into something unique, protectors who would never give up, no matter the odds. Captain Sarah Chen of the UNSS Hope Bringer still remembers the moment that changed everything. One of their children approached me, she recalls in her logs, its light pulsing in what we later learned was their expression of trust. It reached out and touched my hand, and in that moment, I knew we couldn't walk away like the others had. What followed would shock the galactic community. Humans, with our primitive military technology and simplistic economic systems, began the largest humanitarian relief effort in known space. We shared our food, our medicine, our technology, but more importantly, we shared our determination. When pirates tried to raid the relief convoys, they learned the hard way about humanity's protective instincts. When corporate interests tried to block aid shipments, they discovered that humans could be far more tenacious than their lawyers. The other species watched in disbelief as the primitive carnivores demonstrated levels of compassion they had thought impossible from such an underdeveloped race. But they didn't understand what we had known all along, that true strength isn't measured by technological advancement or military might, but by the capacity to care for those who cannot defend themselves. Now, as the Lumini begin to rebuild with humanity's help, the galaxy is starting to realize something that will change the course of interstellar relations forever. But that's a story that deserves its own telling, because what happened next would make even the most skeptical alien question everything they thought they knew about human nature. The first sign that humanity's intervention would have far-reaching consequences came 3 months into the relief effort. The Lumini, whose bioluminescence we had initially thought was purely biological, began displaying patterns that defied our understanding of physics. It started small. A young Lumini teaching a human child how to create floating orbs of light, much to the astonishment of nearby scientists. But what truly caught everyone's attention was their ability to communicate across vast distances without any apparent technology. The Lumini had been keeping this ability hidden from their previous exploiters, having learned the hard way that unique abilities often led to further exploitation. Yet with humans, they felt safe enough to share their secrets. Dr. Olivia Chen, leading the xenobiology research team, discovered that the Lumini's light wasn't just for show. It was a complex form of quantum entanglement naturally occurring in their biology. They're not just generating light, she explained in her groundbreaking report. They're manipulating the fabric of space-time itself, using their bioluminescence as a conduit for something we're only beginning to understand. This revelation sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The same advanced civilizations that had dismissed the Lumini as worthless now scrambled to establish diplomatic relations. But the Lumini, showing a surprising streak of determination they'd learned from their human protectors, rejected these overtures outright. "You abandoned us. Their elder council stated simply, their lights pulsing with a newfound confidence. The humans did not. The partnership between humans and Lumini grew stronger with each passing day. While we provided them with physical protection and resources, they shared insights that revolutionized our understanding of quantum physics. Our ships began incorporating Lumini-inspired navigation systems, making them near impossible to track. Our communications networks evolved beyond anything our former detractors could comprehend. But not everyone was happy about this alliance. The consortium, a shadowy collection of corporate interests from various species, saw the human-Lumini partnership as a threat to their control over interstellar trade routes. They began spreading rumors about humans corrupting the Lumini, claiming our primitive aggressive nature would eventually turn the peaceful species into weapons. What they didn't expect was the response from the Lumini themselves. Using their newly regained confidence, they began sharing stories of their time under exploitation. Stories that made humanity's protective instincts flare even stronger. As tensions rose across the galaxy, a new question emerged. How far would humans go to protect their allies? And more importantly, what other secrets were the Lumini still keeping? Secrets that could change the balance of power forever. The answer would come sooner than anyone expected, when a consortium fleet made the fatal mistake of testing humanity's resolve. The consortium's attack came during the Festival of Lights, the first celebration the Lumini had held since humanity's arrival. 50 warships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons already charging. They expected an easy victory over the handful of human vessels protecting the Lumini homeworld. What they didn't expect was that humans had learned a few tricks from their luminescent friends. As the first salvos lit up the night sky, the human ships seemed to multiply, splitting into dozens of identical vessels. The consortium commanders hesitated, their targeting systems unable to distinguish the real ships from what appeared to be perfect light-based duplicates. This moment of confusion was all the human fleet needed. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the command channel. Remember our training with the Lumini. Light isn't just illumination, it's information. The human ships began moving in impossible patterns, their hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns that the Lumini had taught them to generate. Each pattern told a story, carried a message, created a connection. Deep below the planet's surface, millions of Lumini joined their lights together in a synchronized pulse that made the quantum fabric of space itself shiver. The human ships, now connected to this network through their newly installed Lumini tech interfaces, became something more than mere vessels. They became nodes in a vast web of light and consciousness. The consortium fleet found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't properly see or predict. Human ships would appear to be in one location, only to materialize somewhere else entirely. Their weapons, enhanced by Lumini quantum theories, faced through traditional shields as if they weren't there. But instead of destroying the enemy ships, the humans disabled them with surgical precision. "We're not like you," Captain Chen broadcast to the consortium fleet. "We don't need to destroy to prove our strength." The disabled ships hung in space, their crews watching in awe as the human vessels danced through their formation, glowing with colors no one had ever seen before. But the consortium had one last card to play. From the flagship emerged a figure that made the Lumini's light dim in terror, the same corporate overlord who had orchestrated their exploitation years ago. He activated a device that sent waves of dark energy rippling through space, threatening to disrupt the quantum connection between humans and Lumini. In that moment, with their advanced technology failing, humanity would have to rely on something far more primitive, far more fundamental to their nature. As the darkness closed in, Captain Chen made a decision that would either save both species or doom them all. As the dark energy waves threatened to sever the quantum bond between humans and Lumini, Captain Chen noticed something extraordinary. Where the darkness touched the Lumini's light, tiny fractures appeared in space itself. These weren't signs of destruction, but doorways to something the consortium had been desperately trying to hide. "Everyone full power to your light arrays," Chen commanded, pushing the human fleet's Lumini tech systems beyond their design limits. The ship's hulls blazed like newborn stars, not fighting against the darkness, but harmonizing with it. Each ripple of dark energy revealed more fractures, more glimpses into what appeared to be another dimension. one teeming with ancient Lumini technology. The corporate overlord's voice cracked with panic. "Stop. You don't understand what you're dealing with." But the truth was becoming clear. The Lumini hadn't always been helpless. Hidden in this parallel space was their ancient heritage, a civilization far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The Consortium hadn't just exploited them. They deliberately suppressed the Lumini's true potential, keeping them dependent and weak. As realization dawned, the Lumini's collective light pulsed with a new frequency. Stories passed down through generations in their light-based language suddenly made sense. They weren't just cultural tales, but encoded instructions for accessing their legacy. The quantum connections between humans and Lumini grew stronger, not despite the dark energy, but because of it. Then came the second shock. The corporate overlord's device wasn't just a weapon. It was reverse engineered from stolen Lumini artifacts. By trying to use it against its creators, he had inadvertently given them the key to restoring their heritage. But this revelation came with a terrible choice. The Lumini could reclaim their ancient power, but doing so might destroy the very humans who had protected them. Captain Chen watched as her ship's quantum sensors recorded energy readings beyond anything humans had ever encountered. The Lumini had to make a decision, and fast. The dark energy was becoming unstable, threatening to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. In that moment, the true test of the bond between humans and Lumini would determine the fate of both species. In a blinding flash, the Lumini made their choice. Instead of reclaiming their ancient power alone, they began channeling it through their quantum connection with the human fleet. Captain Chen's ship shuddered as unprecedented energy coursed through its systems. The Lumini weren't choosing between their heritage and their allies. They were choosing to share it all. The dark energy weapon backfired spectacularly, its wielder watching in horror as centuries of stolen technology awakened not to destroy, but to transform. Human ships, still connected to the Lumini network, began incorporating the ancient technology in real time. Their hulls rippled with patterns that told stories of both species' histories intertwined, creating something entirely new. "We remember what it means to be forgotten." The Lumini elder's voice resonated through the quantum network. "Humans remembered us when no one else would. Now we remember together." The combined human-Lumini fleet pulsed with power that made the Consortium's most advanced technology look primitive in comparison. The corporate overlord's final gambit failed spectacularly. As his weapon overloaded, the human Lumini ships created a containment field of pure light, transforming the destructive energy into a sustained quantum bridge between dimensions. The Consortium fleet, outmatched and overwhelmed, surrendered unconditionally. But the greatest surprise came after the battle. The quantum bridge hadn't just accessed the Lumini's ancient technology. It had revealed a network of thousands of forgotten colonies, other species who had been similarly suppressed and exploited. The Human-Lumini alliance had inadvertently sparked a galaxy-wide revolution, not through violence, but through the simple act of remembering those others had chosen to forget. As Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching the quantum network light up with new connections from across the galaxy, she couldn't help but laugh at the irony. The primitive humans and the helpless Lumini had just rewritten the rules of galactic society. But as ships from other forgotten species began appearing through the quantum bridge, she realized this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a much bigger adventure. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Consortium's leaders received a message that made their blood run cold. The forgotten remember, and we're coming home. In the months following the Great Revelation, the galaxy transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The quantum network, now spanning thousands of forgotten worlds, became known as the Remembrance Web. Each day, more lost colonies emerged from hiding, sharing their own unique technologies and cultures that the Consortium had tried to erase. Captain Chen's crew joined the first diplomatic mission to these rediscovered civilizations. The Lumini, now embracing their role as guardians of forgotten knowledge, acted as bridges between species. Their ability to share memories through light became the foundation for a new form of galactic communication, one built on understanding rather than exploitation. The Consortium's empire crumbled not through war, but through irrelevance. As suppressed technologies emerged, Their monopolies on everything from faster-than-light travel to energy production became worthless. Their leaders faced justice not in traditional courts, but in public memory sharing sessions, where they experienced firsthand the suffering they had caused. Humanity's reputation shifted dramatically. Other advanced species, who had once dismissed us as primitive, now sought to understand how we had seen value where they saw only weakness. The answer, as one Lumini elder explained, was simple. Humans remember their own history of struggling against oppression. They carry it not as a burden, but as a lesson. The Lumini homeworld bloomed again, its crystalline spires now pulsing with both ancient and new technologies. Human cities began incorporating Lumini light architecture, creating spaces that could shift and adapt to their inhabitants' needs. But more importantly, these cities became sanctuaries for other forgotten species seeking to reclaim their heritage. As for the quantum bridge, it revealed one final surprise. The different dimensions it connected weren't separate realities. They were layers of the same universe, each holding pieces of history that various oppressors had tried to hide. When viewed together through the remembrance web, they formed a complete picture of galactic history, one that could never be erased again. Standing on the observation deck of the Hope Bringer, Captain Chen watched ships from dozens of species weaving light patterns through space, each telling their own story of remembrance and renewal. "We were never meant to be alone in our struggles," she wrote in her final log entry. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in advancing forward, but in remembering to look back for those we've left behind. And so the galaxy learned what humans had known all along, that true civilization isn't measured by how far you can go, but by how many you bring with you on the journey.